what do you see as the biggest gaps in the pre-construction phase today, and how are they impacting project outcome?
I think gaps is a great word because with good intentions, coming together, design and plan a project. And projects are getting built. This is not like the system's broken and there's no output. I mean, we have trillions of dollars of output of all things being built but the gap points to a number of different things. One, the communication gap, the ability to more easily.
When it comes to construction projects, everyone's focused on the end result, the final product. But what about the steps that lead up to it? The pre-construction phase is often overlooked, yet it's crucial in determining whether a project will succeed or fail. Join us in this episode as we delve into the biggest gaps in pre-construction and explore how these deficiencies can significantly impact project outcomes with Steve Dell'Orto, founder and CEO of ConCntric. Whether you're a construction professional, project manager, or stakeholder, understanding these gaps is crucial for ensuring successful project delivery. I'm your host, James Taylor, and this is the Civil Engineering Podcast. Before we get started, here's a quick word from our sponsor for this episode, PPI, a Kaplan company.
PPI provides expert prep courses and study resources designed to help you pass the FE and PE exams the first time. PPI's live online courses include hours of lectures, problem-solving demonstrations, exam strategy sessions, office hours, and a passing guarantee. Check out PPI today at ppi2pass.com to see all the options available for FE and PE exam prep. Now let's dive into today's episode.
It's now time for our Civil Engineering Conversation of the Week with Steve Dell'Orto. Steve, welcome to the Civil Engineering Podcast.
Thanks for having me today, James.
Steve, can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and what led you to founding ConCntric?
Just from a business perspective, I've grown up in the industry with a top 10 general contractor for 26 years. Kind of grew up career path through the project management ranks, and then ultimately always had my hands into the bidding and the estimating process before the construction actually started. And that really just was the beginning of my appreciation and passion for the front end of the business, which is all of the design and the planning and the estimating and the customer client interactions and working with the design teams. And as I went on to have more and more of a P&L leadership responsibility within the company, it just became more and more of an acute pain point that I was witnessing firsthand. And then I decided a few years back that it was time to go fix it and do it for the benefit of the industry and try to make an impact at that scale. So that's what led me to start ConCntric and to solve the problems I was seeing with technology as a force multiplier and a way to really affect change and leverage all of the information, the data, and the advancements that, quite honestly, when you look around at other industries unrelated to construction, there's been a lot at a much earlier stage and a lot more money invested in adopting technology and investing in technology and other means of innovation to, have better outcomes, more predictable outcomes, and leverage the modern tools that we have at our disposal. Is something as simple as the smartphone and how that's affected our everyday lives. Yet in construction, we're not tapping anything nearly as powerful and as pervasive. And so I set out to do that with ConCntric.
I love hearing that. And the pre-construction side of things, the sooner you're able to identify issues, the more successful a project will end up being. And with that being said, what do you see as the biggest gaps in the pre-construction phase today, and how are they impacting project outcome?
I think gaps is a great word because what we have are great people with good intentions coming together to design and plan a project. And projects are getting built. This is not like the system's broken and there's no output. I mean, we have trillions of dollars of output of all things being built across the world. So, but the gap points to a number of different things. One, the communication gap, the ability to more easily and fluidly communicate and share, digest what information the other person coming from a different background is sharing with us. This is how a developer may need to digest what the builder and the estimator is telling them about cost, but having that done in a way that the developer can really understand without having to, go through an immense amount of detail for hours on end. That's one example. Yeah. One of the other big gaps is the fact that, all those stakeholders in our industry, we've been largely wed to Excel and other things that we would kind of refer to as, even though it's software, it's really analog these days compared to everything else. And we don't have data at our fingertips. We think we do, but we really don't. We have numerical values that occupy a cell in a spreadsheet that are in somebody's C drive. This is not structured, accessible data that once you can actually harness that data from a structured database, and if that data is structured properly, so that way you know what that $1 represents, or that one piece of information, what it's been generally characterized by. Once we can fill that gap, which is what we're doing, or close that gap, now we can start having more predictable outcomes, better data-driven decisions. We can start to be thinking about trends over time, not just reacting to a situation that is presented to us today, and we're reacting to it, which is, being reactive is rarely going to lead you to, positive outcomes. So it's really shifting that paradigm to be more proactive, more data-driven, the ability to have these well-intentioned people be more effective at communicating and sharing information. And then also, we don't enjoy in our industry too much in the way of standards, but we have the right standards in the right areas, whether it's estimating coding systems, or we have, design guidelines and requirements. We have good things to draw from, but what we need are processes that are well established and the best of the best practices, so that way we can also solve the other gap, which is the gap in talent. We have been losing and will continue to lose more and more the baby boomer generation. They're going to be retiring, and they're walking out the door with decades worth of experience and knowledge up here that has not been institutionalized, and it's kind of too late for that. So what can you do today to really prevent the immense downside of having all of that knowledge walk out the door without replacing it with, the people and the information and the things that you need to go on and function with some level of predictability. And so, we have, with population growth and all these other statistics, an immense amount of increase in what is expected to be built in the next 15 years. And at the same time, if our talent deficit, is growing, then we just have this ever widening gap of the demand and the need for things to be built and the available people, management and tradespeople. But let's focus on management for now, the people in our world doing the pre-con. If you have far fewer, then how are you going to meet that demand? And so there's a big gap there. So again, we solve those gaps and, think of what we can do with technology to be a force multiplier. How do we enable the human to shed all of the really repetitive, rote, manual work that can be automated and can be optimized with a computer, and free that human up to do what the human does best and build those relationships and think about what that plan needs to be, and just do that in a much more efficient way with far fewer people hours expended.
I love that. So
that's how we're going to solve that problem.
I love that. And you brought up 4 really good gaps there. Communication, that's such a huge, huge thing. And it's not just communication, as a team, it's communication between thinking about what you're designing on a plan and what actually is going to get constructed, right? I tell young engineers all the time, hey, just because it meets the regulatory requirements doesn't mean that it's constructible. And that's a communication breakdown, a gap, like you would say, between, your designer and who's going to be constructing it. But the technology piece is such an interesting one. And, you hear people say that, hey, will AI replace engineers? And I don't think that's ever going to happen, because you're going to have so much out there. How do data-driven technologies transform the way pre-construction planning is approached in the construction industry?
So, the industry's been evolving over the last 20 years. We've been getting away from the design, bid, build, which was the predominant methodology in the 80s, early 90s, because the outcomes were such that if the owner and the architect were the only ones working the design to get to permit, and then you bid the work out and then just start building it, you brought up constructability, but then just really the budget was not really being addressed at all during that 12 or 18 month period of time where you're going through design. So now we have much more collaborative delivery vehicles in which the builder is coming on board as an early partner alongside the designer, alongside the owner or the developer, to add the cost, the planning, the scheduling aspects and those contributions to having the table set for success, to then go on and build it in a much more predictable fashion. But what's been missing is good process and having the information and the data handy to make that process more effective, easier. And quite honestly, if I'm the builder coming to the table and I say, well, here's the cost for the project, or the budget, this is where I think, all of the pieces and parts will fit in. If I'm the owner and the developer, I'm kind of wanting a little bit more than that. I want somebody to show me, why are you making those recommendations? I mean, why not bring the 5, 10, 50 projects that you've done in the past and have that data from the past be leveraged to validate how you're thinking and what you're presenting for the project today. And better yet, have that past project information part of the mechanism that could give you far more, foresight and predictability into the next project, the future projects, the next one after that. And so that requires data to be available and structured like we were talking about. And only then we can then start to have data-driven decisions and a much more solid foundation upon which we're making decisions and planning the projects. And if we can do that, then the operational, aspect or phase of a project is going to go a heck of a lot smoother. And I know this to be true because, I used to run the work and I used to plan and budget the work. So I know the relationship. And what I also know is a lot of the challenges and the things that cause these late deliveries and, from a schedule perspective and over budget situations. A lot of that could be rendered moot if we had planned the project better and deeper and just gone through the extra length to really validate a few things. But time is the scarce resource here, and people just don't have the bandwidth and the time to go and turn over every stone. And those are the things that are biting, us when we go into construction. So again, it's all interrelated. If we can leverage the information that we have, if we can leverage technology to be a bit of a force multiplier, or freeing up bandwidth to do a better, deeper quality job of the planning, which is going to cure a lot of the problems that are costing, the construction industry worldwide an estimated $250 billion in waste, time, rework, what have you. All of those inefficiencies point to that, $250 billion
Crazy.
of stuff that is not going as smoothly as it otherwise could.
Yeah, it's such a that's a cool thing to be talking about. And you mentioned early on you founded a company, and can you explain a little bit about how ConCntric unifies data, people, and processes to create a more predictable and successful outcome for pre-construction projects?
Yeah, a lot of what we've been talking about is how do you bring people together? And, a simple and recent example is just think about COVID. Before COVID and Zoom calls and this virtual environment we've all gotten comfortable with. When you'd have a planning meeting with the owner and the architect and the builder, it's very common to come together in a conference room. So you have this environment. Now it can be virtual, and virtual being, seeing each other on Zoom call. Think of how do we come together and do the work in a common virtual environment to where we can share information. You have direct access to the numbers, the budget, the options that are in front of you. We can really bring all of that together to remove the barriers of sharing information, communicating. I don't have to email somebody to say, hey, by the way, can you give me the most recent version of this? And then I sit there for 3 hours waiting for you to respond before I can go do my work. That's time, that's waste. So how do we bring people together and actually draw directly from a single source of truth? On top of the fact that you can go from one project team to another project team, and you have different ad hoc spreadsheets, different ways people are going about doing the same thing. That's the enemy of having some level of standardization to where then the data, the predictability of the output of a particular workflow can be more trusted, and you can really de-risk projects from errors and omissions or things that are just half-baked and not well thought out because, let's face it, we're having to do more and more with less experienced people because of that, the talent deficit that we were talking about. So, that's, we keep talking about 3, 4, 5 different aspects, but they all converge to, if you can solve it with a common comprehensive platform in which those critical stakeholders can all come in, do work, leveraging digitized best of the best practices in terms of workflows, have all of those be fully integrated and sync with one another. Now you're really, really starting to drive and leverage technology for what it can do very effectively for you. It will never replace you. Right. It's just going to make you be more accurate. It's going to take a lot of work off of your plate in terms of just the manual, tedious things that, a human shouldn't have to do in this day and age.
The efficiency aspect, right? You're kind of focused on the things that only you can do, right? And it's leveraging, the highest and best use of your time and all of that. You brought up the point of, hey, can I get the latest and greatest of this? The amount of time it takes to, okay, I got to go through my file, figure out where it is. And it's both ends, right? You're wasting time on both ends of that email, not just the person that sent that email saying, hey, when can I get this? And sitting and waiting to get the response. It's also the person trying to, I need to dig through my files, find it, do I need to print out the latest thing, whatever that might be. It's a huge, huge aspect of streamlining projects.
And people want decisions faster and faster. I mean, the world that we live in, just the pace at which people communicate and expect things is becoming more and more almost instantaneous. And so to survive in our industry, people have no choice. They have to start embracing technology because the world is going to blow by them. And we're talking about just in a matter of a couple of years. This isn't long range, decade by decade thinking here. This is, now.
So we've talked a little bit about it, but what role does collaboration play in pre-construction, and how can streamlining workflows improve your project success rates?
Well, pre-construction exists because of the desire for collaboration and more collaboration. So, we know it yields better results when you can get the stakeholders, the owner, the design team, and the builder working together to plan out a project to ensure the ROI of the asset from an owner's perspective is maximized, and for the business outcomes for the design team and the builder, and to make sure that those can be achieved. But it's a team sport, and construction is absolutely all about people, and it's a team sport. And so people need to get together like they want to work through these issues and really think about best ways of designing something or scheduling and sequencing something. And all of that points to, better results and better planned work. And if you can do that in our industry, you're going to deliver faster. You're going to deliver it right the first time without having any rework, and everybody wins. When we don't collaborate, that's when you have the projects that are over budget and everybody's fighting and you have claims and litigation, and only the lawyers benefit from that.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of my time on the design side, and I'll tell you right now, the projects that have the most success is when you are that team, when you're that team, not just designer, but designer, owner, construction. You all got to be working together. At the end of the day, we're all in this for the same thing, right? For the same common goal, which is project success. And if there's a disconnect between construction and design, or design and construction, or the owner's not, like, it's all of those pieces of that triangle that have to work in order for it to stand up. So
that's right.
What do you see as some specific challenges that construction teams face when trying to implement data-driven solutions during pre-construction?
Because we are bringing in and relying on younger and younger talent, the good news is that over the last 5-10 years, what I've seen is just this awakening to the need for technology, the need for data. And so people are more motivated and more embracing of technology than maybe they were 10 years ago. So I think everything points in a good direction. But the challenge still is that, people need to embrace change. Yes, you've been doing it this way for the last 10 or 15 years. And yes, you've been using some version of the spreadsheet you've been using for the last 10 or 15 years, but you're having to recreate the wheel each and every time. What if there was something better that, operated similar to your spreadsheet, but required a fraction of the work by you? You could go at home and be with your family a little bit more and actually get home in time for dinner. Or you could also just go and maybe win more work. And so, direct benefit to the bottom line of a company. There's, at least you have the option of what to do with all this newfound time. So, yeah, the challenges for, a more data-centric focus, I guess, is just the willingness for the people to commit to doing it and leaving what they're currently doing and embracing something new. And that's hard for humans, and that's human nature. But at the same time, you're going to be faced with some level of extinction if you don't.
Do you think there's any type of hesitation of, there's a lot of things out there, and finding the right thing to fit, your work style? Do you think there's some hesitation in that of making the switch from analog to these data-driven solutions?
Some of it comes from their past experiences. And, I know this firsthand from my time as a general contractor. While in pre-con, there has not been much in the way of technology introduced to that, portion, the pre-construction professionals, the estimators, the people that are not going on to be the project manager and the superintendent, they have not had a lot of technology that's been built and delivered to them, except for estimating calculators and a couple of other point solutions. But when you're talking about 30 or 40 things that they're doing day in and day out, for which they're having to create these ad hoc spreadsheets to do, the challenge is that to date, when they have gotten software, it's either been an off-the-shelf solution that the company has, because they've no other choice, and they're just trying to utilize something for construction, even though it wasn't really designed to support the unique needs of our industry. Or it's been a product of somebody outside of our industry that is honed in on, being aware of a problem and try to figure it out as an outsider, never having been involved in construction before. So lacking complete context of the nuance and the business case, oftentimes, and we were the receiver of, software that actually was making more work for us, not less. And so one of the things that has really, really resonated with the market at large, but specifically our customers and the people that we talk to, is the fact that ConCntric and the pre-construction management platform we're building is being built by a builder and by builders, because we have rich domain expertise through and through our team. But having something built by builders for builders compared to the alternative is far more attractive, because it is bespoke and built for their unique needs. We understand, because we've walked in their shoes, how it needs to work and have the vision of how it all needs to interrelate. And when you can get those intersections right between this workflow and this workflow, we already are generating this 1 + 1 = 3 output in terms of the horsepower and the benefits that can be derived out of using a platform as well thought out and as well designed and as comprehensive at a platform scale as what we're doing.
What are some of the latest trends in construction technology, and how do you see them influencing the future of pre-construction?
Well, I mean, the neat thing, and I was just talking to somebody the other day, construction is almost doesn't have boundaries. If you think about construction itself as a $14 trillion industry is usually 7 or 8% of any country's GDP. I mean, it's massive. And so when you go to build something, there's the insurance industry is involved, the financial industry is involved because you're lending, money and capital, et cetera. So you have so many things that you touch. So, the construction industry and trends, there's just a lot going on because, within construction, you have the actual, building phase, and there's all kinds of applications, whether it's robotics, other software applications to make the workforce more efficient. I mean, it's almost limitless what can be done. Trend-wise, though, I mean, obviously AI is a big thing in the news these days, but our problem as an industry is AI depends on data that's accessible and available and is actually reliable. We have very little of that. McKinsey, analyzing the industries, confirmed that only 4% of the data associated with this multi-trillion-dollar industry is actually structured and accessible and usable.
Wow.
So I don't know. Hey, AI can produce something, but you're not going to trust it because it's probably
Right.
half-baked because it really doesn't have,
It's only
much
got 4%.
to draw from.
That's crazy.
4%.
Wow.
So, but there's definitely applications. I mean, we use it all the time because it will save you time in other areas. It's usually, not directly related to the actual construction. But there's definitely a trend and there's promise for that as we structure data. And, it's a big part of what we do, as a platform is to have that added capability to be able to leverage, your data to do more, faster, more powerful things with it. But there's also other trends on trying to solve that workforce problem. I mean, if you don't have the people and the bodies to do the work, you're going to have to do something, and maybe robotics and other ways of putting the work in place or prefabrication off-site, 3D printing. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff going on. It's a very exciting time.
We've talked about a lot of things, and I'm sure we could go on for a lot longer. But what final piece of advice can you offer to construction professionals who want to embrace data-driven technologies and improve their pre-construction processes?
Well, first of all, they need to call us. So
you got to do that. Yep. Number one.
ConCntric will help you with your pre-construction needs. But the individual and the companies, they just need to recognize that there's an old adage that says when was the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. When's the second best time to plant the tree? Today. Because you don't want to be waking up 5 years from now going, man, I really wish I had started to get off of Excel and embrace a much more data-driven approach, because you'll be dead in 5 years. Your company won't exist, or you'll be struggling. The rate of change and the way people are adopting this and using it for winning more work and solving their talent deficits, increasing profitability. I mean, there's a lot of people that are getting ahead of it now, and they've seen it, they've embraced it from the top down and from the bottom up. And that's what it really takes from within these industries. You've got a younger generation that will enthusiastically experiment and use and master the technology, but they need to be empowered.
Yeah.
They need to be supported. It needs to be funded to some extent. And those decisions happen at the top. And so, the leadership needs to recognize that, we talk to customers all the time. And when we actually walk them through with them, all of the steps that they go through to do some manual exercise in pre-construction, and then they actually extrapolate, okay, I do that X number of times a week or a month throughout a year. You add it up. I mean, their eyes go like this. They're like, oh my God, we're spending $250,000 of our G&A, our people's time doing this, when that could be, from a cost perspective, brought down to zero. Does that mean you're going to lay those people off? Heck no, you don't have enough of them to begin with. You're just opening up bandwidth for them to be able to do more and do more value add stuff than moving, numbers from one spreadsheet to another, or, chasing down somebody that you email that you need, access to a document, and they're, really unproductive for 3 hours until they can do it. Those are the things that you solve that make a huge, huge difference. And people need to just, recognize that and make some, and these aren't hard decisions. The proof is laid out. I mean, it is clear as clear can be. You just have to have, the willingness and the guts to just change from what you're used to, and, trying on a new pair of pants. I mean, it's that easy.
If you haven't started yet, now's a good time.
Yes.
All right, now it's time for our CE Hot Seat segment of the week with Steve Dell'Orto. All right, welcome to the CE Hot Seat. You ready to go?
Ready to go, James.
All right, Steve. Do you have any specific rituals that you practice every day? For example, do you have a specific morning ritual or lunchtime ritual, things that you do on a daily basis that contribute to you being a successful professional?
I'm an early riser, so I think that's probably speaks to most people in the construction industry, but I believe just getting up early, get your day started, and allows you to stay ahead of the challenges that you're going to face in the given day. So, my ritual is just really about getting up early, and it gives you a clear head, get a little workout in, anything to do so that way come 7, 8 o'clock when your day starts, you're hitting the ground running.
What is one book that you recommend to engineers regularly, or just one book that you have found to be extremely helpful in your professional and or personal development?
That's a good one. I read a lot, so there's probably too many to choose from. The one that I think inspires me the most, because as we think about change, as we think about the massiveness of the construction industry, I just literally read it, I think, for the third time just a month ago, was Freedom's Forge. And this just talks about how in preparation for World War II, people realized that some gathering storms on the horizon were coming our way, i.e. war. And we needed to really transition the U.S. from this isolationist, mindset to really industrializing and getting prepared for what turned out to be a global war. But, a few handpicked individuals, Bill Knudsen and a few other people at the highest levels working for the president, completely transformed in the span of 3 to 4 years the U.S.'s ability to produce equipment at a scale that's absolutely staggering. But it's an amazing read, and you can appreciate what a human and literally an individual can ultimately achieve with the right level of determination and teamwork, and certainly with empowerment and that need driving the results. It's like necessity is the mother of all invention. So it's a fantastic read. I can't encourage, particularly engineers, because then you really kind of get into the manufacturing, and it's a fascinating read.
Thinking back on your managers of the past, picture your favorite manager or managers. What made them your favorite?
I think what I always appreciated around, the people that I considered mentors was, they were firm but fair. They weren't always the easiest to work with or for, but at the same time, they took an interest in me, and I always could trust that whatever they were doing, they were always looking out for my best interests and always championing, my career growth, at the same time driving me to be my very best, because if I was being my very best, then I was ultimately producing for them and for the company. So I think the traits that I always try to emulate is, first of all, you have to really appreciate everybody on your team and appreciate them for who they are, what they bring to the table. And then, then you have a collection of individuals that you need to shape and mold into being a team. And like I, always say within our industry, it's a team sport. And so, everything you're going to accomplish is going to be accomplished through a team. And if you can bring that team together and have them operate at the individual, best version of themselves, and then collectively the best of the best, then there's a challenge you can't conquer.
I've got one final question, and that is the critical civil engineering career elevator advice question. That's a mouthful, but basically, if you got into an elevator with a civil engineering student and had about 30 to 40 seconds with them, what career advice would you share with them?
Master your craft. I think our younger generations have a tendency to think about career progression as I did this, check the box, I'm on to the next thing, check the box, and I'm going after a title or stature within the company. And they tend to rush that and not truly learn and master the actual skills involved in, that level, that title or role on a team. So I just always encourage people, the better you do, and the more deeply you master those things from a long range perspective, you're going to go much further in your career than those who just want to check those boxes, because eventually you're going to be in a position where everybody's looking at you for the answers. Or if you're the leader, you better know how to do whatever it is you're trying to get other people to do. And if you don't have the substance, then you're not going to be successful.
I love it. Steve, thank you so much for joining me today. Where can our listeners connect with you further?
Obviously on LinkedIn, please reach out to me. But if you want to learn more about ConCntric and what we have to offer as a pre-construction management solution, you can come to our website, which is www.concentric.com. And you can connect with me or our team through our website, and we'd love to engage with you.
Thanks so much, Steve. Appreciate having you.
Thanks, James.
Please remember you can find the show notes for this episode at civilengineeringpodcast.com. There you will find a summary of the key points discussed in today's episode, as well as links to any of the resources, websites, or books mentioned during this episode. Until next time, I wish you the best in all of your civil engineering endeavors.